Annyeong, ni hao, konnichiwa.
Well, here we are again. It's always such a pleasure.
Hi guys! So my friend asked me to make a video on how to use a sewing machine, which is a really good question. However, halfway recording the video, my camera kind of took a poopsies for the worst and died. So I'll be recording it all with my webcam instead, which is good and bad at the same time because it's not a detachable webcam, so you're kind of only going to get one position or camera view. That being said, however, if there's anything that you want a close-up of later when I have batteries in my camera, for example, if you wanted a close-up of how to wind a bobbin or something, just leave it in the comment section below and I'll be sure to make that a separate video for you as soon as possible. So first I'm going to talk about my machine. I currently have a Singer stylus. For the price, it was pretty good. However, I'm not completely satisfied with it, and in fact soon I will be returning it because of some malfunctions that it has, even though I only got it a few weeks ago. I'm kind of picky with machines. I don't feel like I should need to have to take it into a shop only a week after I bought it. That being said, there are a lot of negative reviews for this machine and new Singer machines in general. So I'm going to be upgrading soon to a different machine, actually a brother machine to be more specific, which I'll do a review video of later. However, if you're interested in a Singer machine and want to attempt it anyways, you'll notice that there's 100 different types of stitches and like 6 different types of buttonholes. It's a really nice machine. It just has some functional errors. So, first things first, you will either have a power cord that is attached with your pedal or a separate cord for your pedal. I've had machines that go both ways. So you just plug those into the respective holes. Ta-da! And then your nice sewing machine is on. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is how to wind a bobbin. A bobbin is a thread that goes underneath the needle in the sewing case and is used for the underneath stitches of whatever your garment you're sewing. So this is actually my least favorite part because it just is it can be very time consuming sometimes. It only takes like 30 seconds, but I'm super impatient, especially when my bobbin runs out during the middle of making a costume. So what you first do is you put your spool of thread up on its holder. You will pull it through, and most machines have directions for how to thread a bobbin, either printed on them or with the manual. Now if you don't have the manual and it's not printed on, you can also just type in the type of machine that you have onto Google, and most people have scanned, or most websites of the companies that own them will have their manuals up online. So to get you a better view, this is the guide for how to wind or how to thread my machine. So I just put it here, I laced it through here, and then I have this, which your bobbin will have holes on it. Here's my bobbin, sorry. And you just take your thread and you thread it to the bobbin hole, like so. You don't need to wind it around or do anything like that. Place it there and push this forward. Now this right here is an automatic stopper, which mine on my machine doesn't work, which is another reason why I want to take it back. And it's a common problem amongst most people. Some machines you have to pull out the dial to stop the needle. This machine, however, once you've pushed over this, you'll notice how it looks like this. But if I push it back, it does normal stitching. So this means that it's ready to wind a bobbin, and it stops the needle from moving on its own, which is a pretty nice feature. So then all you do is, once it's moved over, just hold on to that string that's out and press your pedal, and there you go. You've got a wound bobbin. Now, once your bobbin's wound, you need to put it in your bobbin case. This one has a drop case where you just drop it in. I had another machine that had a front loading case. A lot of people, believe it or not, prefer these drop cases. I find them extremely irritating because I don't find that they're that easy. And a lot of people find it the reverse way. They find front cases, loading cases, are much more difficult. I think it's maybe just because I learned on a front loading case. So what you do is you take your bobbin, hold on to the string that's wrapped around it, and you just, I'll try and do this in the most, drop it in there. And then holding onto the bobbin, there's these little notches. Now on my machine, I have it as a sticker, not printed on, how to wind the bobbin in the bobbin case. Let me try and show you. Right here. This part is pretty machine specific. I've had, on all the machines that I've worked on, many different ways. However, on drop cases, I've had them all pretty much work the same way, where I take it to the farthest right notch, push it down, and then pull it to the right. Then you just replace your case on it. Alright, so now that we have our bobbin ready, it's time to thread our machine. So, my machine has step-by-step instructions on how to thread it. In fact, every machine I've ever worked on has always had step-by-step instructions on how to thread it. If you don't, almost every machine is pretty similar. But if you're still kind of worried about it, you can also check out, like I said before, online to see if anyone has a tutorial on either how to thread specifically your type of machine or has uploaded the manual guide. So, the step-by-step instructions for how to thread my machine. Step 1 is here, step 2 is here, step 3 is down here, and step 4 is up here. Before you thread, you're going to want to make sure that this little guy right here is at the highest point possible. So, I just loop it under, I bring it down this first slot here that says 2, get it down to the bottom, and actually bring it back up. Then, when you get to the little silver guy that's in here, you'll notice how it has an opening in the back. You're just going to want to make sure that you kind of catch it in the little loop and pull it back down. Now, once you get down to here, this can sometimes be the most trickiest part. There'll be a little notch right above your needle. You can use that. A lot of people don't use it for some reason. I've always put my thread through there. Then, you just thread your needle like you would any other needle. If you're finding that you're having difficulty, trip the end, even lick it. There's also, they sell needle threaders. My machine actually has an automatic threader. However, I personally do not know how to use it because I've never used an automatic threader before on a machine, and I just always thread my own needles. Okay, so this next part would have been really great to have a handy little handheld camera because I need to get really close. However, I can't. That being said, I'm going to do as best a job as possible. If for some reason you need better explanation, please let me know, okay? Okay, so now what we're doing is we're going to try and pull the bottom bobbin thread up through the little slot in between the dog feet. And to do so, we just need to crank our needle down once, and then pull up. And then you'll see 2 strings. Yay! When you have these 2 strings, there's typically like a slot or an opening in your presser foot, which is this little guy right here. Just pull it through. And then you're officially ready to start sewing. Okay, so now you're pretty much ready to start sewing. What you just want to make sure is right here that you have your settings set to the right things. For example, right now we just want to do a basic straight stitch. So we have, some machines will have a left and right kind of counter. The middle for that is 3.5, and they'll have stitch length. The middle for my machine on stitch length, like the average, is 2.5, which is what I typically sew on. So what you just want to do is take your piece of fabric and line it up properly. You'll check on your pattern or whatever you're using, whether you drafted your own pattern, or if you're just using a pattern, you want to check and make sure that you're sewing with the correct seam allowance. Most patterns run 5/8 inch unless otherwise specified. So if you don't for some reason have the instructions, it's best just to guess 5/8 inch because you can always take it out and then sew closer or further. And what a seam allowance is there's tiny little numbers right here down by your presser foot. And what that means is, for example, I'm going to sew on a 5/8 inch. So this one says 5/8, so I just run up the edge of the fabric next to that and put my presser foot down. Now to actually start the sewing, now that we have that done, all we've got to do is just press forward on the pedal. After you get about 3-4 stitches in, you're going to want to back stitch to lock in that stitch. What that means is that when you lock in your stitch, it won't come apart. If you don't lock in your stitch, you risk the chance of it just literally almost falling apart. So my machine has this right here, which is a reverse turn. It does it automatically. Some machines, which I like more than this because it can be kind of confusing, is machines that have switches to go backwards. So just press that button and it goes back, and then I go forward again. Now some tips that I have is try not to pin your fabric as much as possible. I know a lot of beginners need to use fabric. I know that there's a lot of slippery fabrics that you need to use pins on, but whatever you do, just try and pin them. Just try not to pin them as much as possible is what I'm trying to say, excuse me. If for some reason you do need to pin, your fabric, what you're going to want to do is pin it down and out, so that way it is perpendicular to the way that you're sewing. Math terms. These are tiny like glass bead needles, or pins, excuse me. They're super tiny, so I typically just sew right over them. You can sometimes hit them. I've never broken a needle on them. I don't know if other people have. Whenever I hit them, they just bend slightly. I like them because you can just speed right through with them still in. Although I recommend, if you don't know whether or not your pins are like glass head or super thin, just to take them out before you reach them with your needle. So once you go forward all the way and you got to the end, make sure that you back stitch again. Some machines will have a fancy little cutter right here. I don't know if you can see. Whoop, right here. So you just pull your thread up and push it through. If it doesn't, just take a pair of scissors and cut it. Now whenever you sew, you're going to want to make sure that the tails of your string are not super long, but just a nice little tug, so that way it won't get sucked back down under to the machine. So now we've done our basic front stitch with a back stitch. The next thing I want to show you is how to change your stitching size. So these buttons on my machine change my stitch. These change my stitching size. I used to have an older machine that was all dial work when it came to stitches. This meant that it didn't have as many stitches, but it was a bit more of freedom to my control. I do, however, prefer the computerized for some reason. So you would just press up, for example, until I would get to 4.8, 4.5 for a basing stitch. A basing stitch is a stitch that you don't want to necessarily stay. It's just something to keep the fabric together until you're able to stitch it with a regular stitch that you want. I'm not going to show you how to base things because it's pretty simple and is exactly the same as what I've already showed you. You just don't backstitch at the beginning and at the end. So instead, I'm just going to take our stitch back down to a 2.5, and I'm going to go to my zigzag, which is 3. So I go to the second button and get there. Now, why am I doing this? Because I want to show you how to keep your ends from fraying completely off. So what you do is you just line up your fabric so that way the end goes through about the center, just enough so that way it'll touch when it hits left, but it'll go over and not hit the fabric when it goes to the right. That's the key part. When it does that, it'll wind around it and it'll lock it up. My presser foot currently has a little arrow that shows me when it's in the middle, so I know just where I start. Now on zigzag stitches, you don't need to back stitch. So we just sit, go. And I don't know if you can see it, but There you have your straight stitch and your zigzag stitch. I don't think it's getting in focus because of the webcam. Once again, I apologize for having to use this. I also really hate using it because I keep looking down here instead of looking at you guys. That is just a basic of how to use your machine. If it was a little confusing, let me know. I also believe I did not state this, which is kind of ridiculous, but it was pretty obvious. To make your machine go, you take your pedal and you press down on it. Some machines have right here speed control. I always set mine to the highest. If you're unsure, you can set yours to the lowest and just go at a speed that's comfortable for you. So that's basically all I have on sewing machines. If you have any more specific questions, just put them down below in the comments. And thanks for watching, guys. Oh, hey guys, real quick, I just wanted to give a shout out to the person who asked the question, which is the user, thejoshieg, or also known as Josh Griffin. If you want to search for his videos on YouTube, just type in the thejoshieg in your search bar above. I will also link below. He does a lot of really awesome videos at conventions with cosplayers and just about conventions, and sometimes even with voice actors and guests with his pal Hector. So be sure to check them out. They're some of the greatest things you'll ever watch. Thanks!